Hello, neighbors. I'm launching my new business on the internet, and it's called the Organism Chapter 4, which is a professional development process. This process fixes people, places, and things. I became aware of this process in 1975 when I was unaware and irrational and addicted to everything that America had to offer you. And my mentor, Ron, he took me and taught me through this process for my own growth. And then about middle ways through my counseling, he asked me, did I want to become a counselor? And I told him, I said, no, I don't think I could become a counselor because of the way that I feel about the races, and it would be hard for me to get up and teach white people how to do things and fix their life when I got so much hatred and revenge for them from coming from Mississippi. And he told me, say, don't worry about that. He said he would fix that in me, which it kind of knocked me out of control because I didn't know what he meant by fixing. How can you fix the hatred that you have for another race? But by the by, going through the training, he took that hatred and revenge. It wasn't racism then, because that word didn't even exist at that time. It was hatred and revenge and discrimination and prejudice is what they called it then. But I went through the training for my own growth, and then I went through the training to become a counselor. And during my counseling training, my mentor, Ron, who had made me his protege by that time, and he came down with acute leukemia in '76. We was in training. I was in training to become a counselor, and he came downstairs at the Christmas party, and he was really didn't look himself because he was running 4 miles a day. He was healthy. He was a healthy Michigander, as you would call him, but I loved this man. This was the first white man that I had ever, even considered loving. But I did love him. And then when he was getting ready to die, it was really painful for me. He had acute leukemia, and he was down at the hospital in Ann Arbor. And his wife, Cynthia, would go down to visit him, and she would bring back what he wanted us to know. And a few days before he died, and I was angry with God because he was a white man that really could fix people's lives, get them off of their addictions, and he didn't have any prejudice or discriminating racism in his body at all, and he was teaching others how not to have that quality in them too. And so I was angry with God because he was getting ready to take Ron, who should have been here for years and years. He was going to become a rich man because of selling his process. And Cynthia came back that Sunday we was in training, and she said Ron had told her, after she asked him, say, Ron, what's happening to us? And he told her, outside of the fact that he was dying, things couldn't be better. And that just blew my mind. How could an individual that's dying and has so much to live for say something like that and be comfortable with dying like that? But over a period of time, I began to understand what he meant, and it kind of eased some of the tension that I had about him dying, and I got more comfortable with it. And after he died, I committed to go on through training, and which I did, and I got my certificate, and then I went on through trainer of trainers, which means that I can train my own trainers to do the same thing that I do. And I bought a franchise of the original organism, which is the Organism Chapter 4. That's what I am. I think they only sold 4 chapters, and I was the 4th chapter fourth person by the chapter in Organism. And so I was going to bring mine back to Mississippi, which I did. And but Cynthia told me if I stayed up there with her, she would make me a rich man, which I could have stayed there, but I wanted to bring it back to Mississippi because when I left Mississippi in 1964, I was really angry, and I had a lot of hatred for white people because of what they did to James and Michael. And who I'm talking about is Michael Swerner and James Chaney. They were members of the Corps, and they were going out trying to get black people, which was colored people then, and Negroes, to vote. And I was working as a taxi dispatcher beneath the Corps office, and I talked to Michael and James every day, and I would give them directions on where to go out in the different counties, because I had grew up in Preston, Mississippi, which was Kemper County, and we had always visited each other's churches all in all these counties, and I would tell them the best way to go to get to these places and who to see when they got to these places. But they tried to get me to join Corps, but working for my Uncle Fully, he wouldn't have anything to do with me being in Corps, because he was running a business, and he didn't want the white people to come blow up his taxi stand or get a bad attitude about him trying to be in the civil rights movement. So I never told him what James and Michael and I talked about, and that I was like an undercover helper of the Corps, which means the Congress of Racial Equality. And so this particular Sunday that they were murdered by Edgar Ray Killen and his Ku Klux Klan, because Edgar Ray Killen was the grand wizard of this clavering that was around in Neshoba County, Lauderdale County. And they had talked me into going with them down to see this church that the Ku Klux Klan had burned down in Philadelphia. So I said, yeah, I'll go, because I wanted to really see if white people was that demonic to burn down a Christian church, the same Christian church that they were going to. I just didn't believe it, so I was going to go down there and see. But before I could go with them that morning, my Uncle Fully came by and said that he needed me to work that morning because the lady that worked the morning shift, she couldn't make it. So I didn't say anything. I just said, well, okay. So that meant I wouldn't get to go to Philadelphia to see the church and go with Michael and James. So when they came around to the taxi cab stand that morning looking for me, another individual had came, just arrived down to as a member of Corps, who was named Andrew, which he made the third civil rights worker. And I just met him at that one time. I just had a chance to say hi, and they left, and I told them I had to work, so they left and went to Philadelphia, and they never returned. And when they didn't return, I knew what had happened to them then. I knew that they was dead, because I knew the white people in Mississippi, because they had murdered the deputy sheriff in Philadelphia, had shot my cousin down in 1959 in Philadelphia because he was trying to get with a black lady that the deputy sheriff was going with. So I knew that they would kill you, and nothing was ever done about that. And so I kept trying to warn James and Michael that this was dangerous territory down here. But Michael, he was kind of naive about it. He didn't think that they would do anything to white individuals here in Mississippi, but he was wrong. And I told him no, they didn't see him as white. They seen him as a nigger lover, and they would be just as hard on a nigger lover if they would a nigger. So, but he never did really accept that and receive it. He thought that he could talk his way and he could reason with them, but he didn't. He couldn't talk his way out of that. So that Sunday, as I understood, since that time that Edgar Ray Killen, they were out at a little cafe called the Checkerboard, planning and plotting what they were going to do to goatee. They called Michael goatee, because he wore a goatee then. Here, that was a little piece of hair right there on your chin. And they were talking about how they were going to teach him a lesson, and how they were going to plot. So they was out there plotting that at the same time that I was there in the cab stand dispatching. But James and Michael and Andrew had left for for Philadelphia. And I was just anxious about it the whole time. The whole day I was thinking that I should have been with them. But they did, and the rest is history. They stopped them down there. They put them in the jail, in the Shelby County jail in Philadelphia, and in the meantime, they was getting the Ku Klux Klan together to stop them when they released them. And that's what they did. And they stopped them, and they took them off on another road. And that road, you can still see when you go to Philadelphia. They got a plaque down there and everything where they took them up in there, and they got them out of the car, and they beat them, they browbeated them, and they cussed them and talked about them, and then they beat them, and then they ended up shooting them and killing them. So that was the 3 civil rights workers murder, and then all the rest of it you can find out. But when I knew that they wasn't coming back, and they had released them that night, and about an hour later they hadn't made it back to Meridian, and the people in Core was getting anxious and fearful. But I knew then that they was gone, and that would be the end of them. They wouldn't be coming back, and that's the way it happened. So, but in the meantime, I had talked to my mother and my aunt, who was a instructor at Tennessee State in Nashville, and after they heard what had happened, they ordered me to leave there and come to Nashville, Tennessee. So that's what I had to do. I wanted to stay, but they wouldn't let me stay. So I caught the Greyhound that particular day, and when I was leaving Meridian, I left there with a really heavy heart, and I left there with a lot of anger and hatred in my heart. And I said I would be back to get the revenge for them, what they did to James and Michael, and also Andrew then. And but I didn't know how I was going to do that. I didn't know what I was going to raise me an army to come back down there to fight them or what. But what happened is that Providence made it so that I got this professional development process, and instead of using bullets and hatred and things like that for violence, it gave the process, which is a loving process, and a process to make people love people and make people rational in how they love people, and to know that you have to be neighborly and you have to love your neighbor, just like the infinite man set the rules when he created the universe with his divine design. He said you gotta love God and you gotta love the neighbor. And that's where it was at the beginning, and that's where it will be throughout all eternity. But men themselves, they resist loving the neighbor. And if in certain races, they don't want to love the other race. And that's what had happened in Mississippi and all the southern country. And that's where slavery came in at. And this is the way it is today. That's why you have so much racism and so many police officers shooting down black men in the street for no reason at all. And this is where it's got to. But my process, which I will be giving my clients over the internet, like I'm doing now, you call in and I'll fix your problem. I'll show you how to fix whatever problem that you have, and you can go on with a successful lifestyle and get over anything that you have. And I also do death and grief counseling. If somebody that you love died and you can't get comfortable with it, and the grieving process didn't do it for you, then you can call in and we can talk about it. And I can share some things about your loved one and what has happened to them and what they're experiencing now in the spiritual world. of the world of spirits. That information is in the world, and I also have that. But the main thing I'm going to be focused on is fixing people's life in the now, because that's what they think about. People don't think too much about the next life, the afterlife. They think about, how can I be happy in this life that they're living now? And that's what the organism process will help you do. So you can call me, and we can get here face to face like this, and you can tell me your issue and your problem, and I'll give you all the answers that you need to know and from the Organism Chapter 4 process. Like I said, I have all of the answers. So the overall object of the therapeutic process in the Organism Chapter 4 is to provide the conditions where the client can become less and less dependent on persons, places, and things. And you'll make the insightful discovery that you can do much more than you think you can, with awareness and acceptance of yourself. And this is what the Organism Chapter 4 will be doing for people as they call me and request the counseling and therapy that they need. Now, this is my first video that I'm launching. You'll be seeing some other videos of what I've done down in Mississippi, and I was running for governor down here and different things, and I was on different shows and stuff. Those videos will be on there for you to get an idea of what my rationale and thinking is. So this is my ending of my introduction to the Organism Chapter 4 of Professional Development Process, and I am anxious to move on.